Hey everyone. Tonight, we're crawling into the narrow, filth-clogged alleys of medieval cities. Not as a noble, but as someone far less glamorous. You are a rat catcher. And your life? It reeks, quite literally. You don't wear armor, you wear rags soaked through with centuries of stink. You crouch in basements, knee-deep in dung, chasing squealing vermin through piss-soaked straw with nothing but a stick, a sack, and a prayer that you don't get bitten. So, before you get cozy under that warm blanket, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. But only if what I do here genuinely helps you wind down at night. And hey, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? And what time is it right now? There's something oddly soothing about knowing there are others awake with us, wandering through history together. Now dim the lights. Light a candle if you've got one. Or just let the gentle glow of your screen flicker like a torch on a damp medieval wall. Close your eyes and let the sound of scurrying paws and creaking trapdoors take over. You're stepping into the boots. Well, more like the rotting shoes of a man nobody wants to be. Because tonight, you're the rat catcher. You didn't choose this job. Not really. No one ever dreams of it. Not when they're a child playing in the mud with sticks. Not when they're learning to sharpen a blade or mend a shoe. No one looks at a squealing, scab-nosed rodent and thinks, yes, I shall devote my life to hunting that. But when your hands are calloused from hunger and your belly has learned to speak in groans and knots, you learn to follow the stink. Because where there's rot, there's rats. And where there are rats, there's coin. The day you became a rat catcher was the same day you stopped caring what people thought when they wrinkled their noses at you. No baker would take you in. The cooper said you were too thin to lift a cask. The tanner's yard burned your skin and lungs with its lime-soaked hides. So you turned to the alleys, to the damp, rotted corners of the town, where the shadows twitch and the straw beneath your feet sometimes moves on its own. That's where the rats are. And that's where you found old Alric. He had one eye, 2 fingers missing, and a bag that stank worse than a midden heap in summer. He handed you a stick and pointed to a pile of wood near the fishmonger's stall. Wait, he said. You'll hear 'em first. You waited. You heard them. The chittering, the soft, wet rustle of paws, and then movement. Your heart beat like a war drum. You swung your stick too fast, missed, swung again. The rat darted between your legs, but Alric's dog, half blind, mostly ribs, missing an ear, snapped it up with a crunch. Good, said Alric. Now again. You worked with him for 3 weeks. No pay, just scraps and a blanket that smelled like cabbage and death. He showed you the nests under floorboards, the soft squish of bedding made of chewed cloth and baby bones. He taught you how to spot the dark oil stains along a wall that marked a rat run, how to bait a trap with spoiled cheese, and how to tell the difference between a rat that's just scared and one that's sick. The sick ones bite harder, he warned. And sometimes it's the bite that kills, not the rat. When Alric took a fever, he coughed black into a rag and gave you the bag. Yours now, he wheezed. Not much in it. Some traps, some dried guts for bait, and a nail file. A nail file? You didn't ask. After that, you worked the town yourself. No license, no guild to welcome you. The baker's wife tossed you a halfpenny for clearing out her storeroom. the stable master paid you in spoiled oats. You caught 24 rats in the castle kitchens and earned enough to buy a new pair of boots, used, cracked, and 2 sizes too small. But they were yours. People didn't look you in the eye. You were part of the filth now, same as the rats. But sometimes, when the scratching in their walls turned to shrieks, when their child came down with a fever, and they blamed a flea, they called for you. Not by name, just the catcher. You came with your sack and your stick. You crawled through soot-black chimneys and into cellars where the walls wept with mildew. You worked through the night, breathing air so thick with rot that it clung to your tongue. You caught rats bigger than kittens, scarred from fighting each other for bread crusts. You found one with a human toe in its nest. You didn't ask questions. You just added another coin to your pouch. You learned quickly which homes would never be rid of them. Places with meat hanging too close to the floor. Rooms where servants swept the filth under the rugs. Inns where chamber pots overflowed behind the kitchen. You could tell a house's secrets by its rats. The size of the nest. The number of young. The things they chewed on. Sometimes it was more than cheese. Some folk feared you, said you had the plague sent on you, that where you went, sickness followed. You didn't argue. Better to be feared than questioned. You let them think your dog could sniff out the devil in a thatch roof. You charged extra when they crossed themselves as you passed. It wasn't all coin and horror, though. Some nights, you had a roof. Some days, the sun warmed your back instead of searing the inside of your nose with the scent of dead things. On better days, someone would offer you ale. Not to drink with them, of course, but to go. You'd take it. Children throw pebbles at you sometimes, call you names, said your clothes looked like they'd been chewed. They weren't wrong, but you just smiled. Because every child afraid of a rat catcher grows into an adult who needs one. You see, catching rats isn't a job. It's a curse you accept. It's scraping under floorboards while nobles above dine on goose and honeyed apples. It's the cough that never quite leaves your lungs. It's the itch that makes you wonder if it's fleas or just fear. It's waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of scratching and not knowing whether it's outside your door or in your dreams. And yet, when the bell rings in the tower and the town cries out about a rat in the bread oven or a nest under the pulpit, who do they send? Not the butcher, not the smith. You, the rat catcher. Because someone has to go where the stink begins. Someone has to lift the rotten boards and stare into the twitching dark. Someone has to face what scuttles through the cracks of civilization. And that someone is you. You awaken before dawn. Your cot smells like old straw and mildew, and the cold has crept into your joints again. You cough once, then twice. Your throat is sore from the smoke of last night's fire, not illness. You tell yourself you have no time to be ill. Not in your line of work. The rats don't wait. Your name is not known to the nobles. They don't look at you. But they summon you all the same when the squeaking behind the walls becomes too loud, when their hams are gnawed into, when their daughters see black eyes glinting in the candlelight. They call you when the danger scurries unseen, then turn their noses away when you arrive, as though you're made of the very filth you chase. In this century, rats are not just a nuisance, they are omens. They carry death in their bellies and on their backs. They are the small, clawed messengers of the plague. And you are expected to face them. The people call it the Great Mortality, though in taverns they whisper other names. God's curse, the choking pest, the Black Death. It began when you were still a child, 1347 they say, but its memory hangs over every town square and every alley even now, years later. The rats arrived first, then the fleas, then the pustules, then the coughing, the shaking, the death. You remember the faces, your uncle foaming at the mouth, the baker's boy with purple bruises blooming like violets beneath his skin. You remember the carts piled high with those who had no breath left. "Bring out your dead!" they cried. That song still wakes you in the night. And there were always rats. They came out after the bodies were taken. Always hungry, always bold. In the city, they grew fat on corpses. In the countryside, they snuck into the granaries and haylofts. You remember seeing one climb across your sister's pillow while she slept, its tail dragging across her face. You never told her. You still don't know if it bit her. She died 3 days later. Back then, people didn't understand what the rats were. Some still don't. Some think the plague comes from bad air, from wicked thoughts, from the stars. You don't argue with them. Let the priests speak of sin. You deal in teeth and claws. You know what you see. You know when the rats come, death follows. You started this work because there was nothing else. The plague took your father. The famine took your farm. The townspeople needed someone to chase the vermin. So you caught your first rat with a sack and a broken broom handle. You were bitten twice that day. You still carry the scars. Your hands are hard now. Your lungs are burned from the smoke of pitch fires and sulfur. You wear layers of thick wool not for warmth, but to soften the sting of bites. Sometimes, you smear vinegar on your arms, hoping the stench will repel fleas. It doesn't. The fleas are patient. They wait. You've seen the rats up close, closer than anyone. Their eyes are not empty. They gleam with hunger and cunning. Their bodies are covered in filth, their bellies bloated from grain and gore. Their tails leave trails in the ash. You know their ways. You know where they hide. In the wood piles, the privies, the eaves. You've pulled them out from beneath cradle boards and found them curled in the folds of dead men's cloaks. You've seen worse. You once opened a barrel in a merchant's cellar and found nothing but bones and squeaking. You sealed it back up and told him it was flour gone bad. He didn't ask questions. They call you only when it's too late, when the rats have already gnawed through the grain sacks, when their neighbors are coughing blood, when a child won't wake. Then they remember your name. They hand you a torch and point you toward the darkness. They want you to perform miracles, but you know the truth. You can kill 1,000 rats, but another 1,000 will take their place, because the people still leave, refuse in the gutters. They still let dogs rot in the lanes. They still pour waste from their windows into the streets. The rats don't come because they're evil. They come because the humans make it easy. You remember once in York, a man swore he saw a rat the size of a pig. He claimed it spoke Latin. Others said they saw a black swarm coming down the chimney. You don't argue with them? You've seen worse. In the old monastery, there were so many rats that they rustled the rafters like wind in the trees. You spent 2 nights there. When you came out, you had killed 37. And still, the abbess said she heard them that night, scratching at the altar. You've tried poisons. They don't work fast enough. You've tried boiling vinegar, smoke, traps. Still, they come. They climb walls, chew through wood, survive drowning. Some nights, you think they are laughing at you. Some nights, you think they win. But still you go back, because someone must. Because every child's life spared from plague is worth the scars on your hands. Because you've seen how fast the dying spreads, and you'd rather face the rats than bury another friend. You don't ask for thanks. You don't get it anyway. When you walk through the market, people look away. You smell of pitch and blood and rotted wood. You are a necessary shame. You are the reason their bread isn't gnawed. You are the reason they still breathe. But they will never say so. You go home alone. You wipe the blood from your gloves. You light a candle and listen for scratching in the walls. And you wait, because the rats always come back. You wake before sunrise again. Not because you enjoy the cold, dark hours, but because that's when the rats are still sluggish from a night of feasting, still slow enough to catch before they dart back into the shadows. The air is thick with fog and rot, and you can already smell the day ahead. Old meat, dried blood, the oily coat of a ferret that hasn't been bathed in weeks, and your own sweat mixing into the same linen shirt you've worn all season. You reach down and begin to gather your tools, the way a knight would arm himself for battle, though your enemies are smaller, faster, and far more numerous. First, the sack. It's rough wool, patched more times than you can count. It used to be for grain, but now it's for bodies. Rat bodies. You'll carry them back, dead or twitching, for a few coins apiece. Not that anyone cares what you do with the carcasses afterward. Burn them? Throw them in the river? Feed them to stray dogs? Doesn't matter, so long as they're out of the way. Next, the club. A simple thing. A thick, knotted piece of ash wood, shaved smooth by the palm of your hand. You don't swing it like a soldier does. It's more of a precision tool. You learn the rhythm. One clean strike behind the skull before the rat has time to shriek. Too slow, and it'll vanish between the stones or sink its teeth into your calf. You've got a few scars like that already. One of them still leaks pus if you press on it wrong. You try not to think about that. Too long. Now the net, or what's left of it. You made it yourself from string and patience, weaving it in the evenings while rats scurried beneath your floorboards. It's got holes now. Rats chewed through parts during a job last week in the apothecary cellar. But it still works if you're quick. You drape it over cracks, wait, or sometimes toss it like a fisher might. Once the rats tangle themselves in its coarse embrace, you bash them before they wriggle out. It's messy, frantic work. But no one ever said rat catching was a profession for gentle hands. And then, of course, the ferret. Its name is Thistle, though it doesn't respond to that or anything, really. Ferrets aren't pets, not like cats or dogs. They're long, bony things with sharp teeth and quicker moods than any priest on Easter Sunday. You keep Thistle in a tiny wooden crate when he's not working, and even then he stinks like moldy straw and old piss. but by God, he's good at what he does. When you release him into a hole, he slinks through like smoke, chasing rats into the open where you can do your part with the club or the net. Sometimes he comes back with blood on his face, looking far too pleased with himself. Sometimes he comes back with nothing, and you wonder if he's eaten your catch before you could count it. You've tried working with dogs too. Some men swear by them. Small terriers mostly, trained to shake a rat to death in one good thrash. But you don't have the coin to feed a dog. A ferret eats scraps. A dog eats meat. That's the difference between you and the men with better boots. Every now and then, you improvise. You've used fish hooks on string dipped in pig grease. You've tried leaving out bowls of sour beer to slow them down. You once heard of a man who poured hot wax into a burrow to seal the devils in, though you're not sure that worked for long. The truth is, none of these tools were made for this job. No one makes things for rat catchers. You borrow, adapt, and make do with what you have. There's a myth among the townsfolk that rat catchers keep charms, tiny bones or dried herbs that scare rats away. You let them believe that. You even tied a dead bat's wing around your wrist once just to spook a barmaid into giving you a free mug of ale. The truth: rats fear nothing. Not the smell of blood, not the stench of burning. They go where the food is. They breed in warmth and filth. And they always, always come back. That's why the towns keep hiring you. No matter how many you kill, they return. And so do you. With your sack, your net, your club, and your half-wild companion wriggling inside a crate. Sometimes children follow you when you walk through the streets. They call you names: Rat Man, Vermin Whisperer, Plague Bait. You don't mind. It's better than being ignored, at least until the rats get into their parents' flower stores or chew through a monk's sandal during Mass. Then they want you again. Then you're useful. And at the end of the day, when you've emptied your sack onto the pyre and shaken the fleas off your sleeves, you rinse your club in dirty rainwater and wipe your face with the hem of your tunic. No one thanks you. You eat cold barley mash beside your ferret, who gnaws on the tail of your smallest catch. You don't bother counting how many you got. It's never enough. You sleep beside your tools because if you leave them out, someone will steal them. Even in a job as filthy as this, someone always wants what you've got. Because for all the stink, the bites, the boils, and the bruises, rat catching pays. And people talk less when the rats are dead. So you cradle your club like a scepter and your sack like a shield. It isn't glory. It isn't peace. But it's a living. And tomorrow, when the church bell rings and someone finds droppings in the chapel bread box, they'll come knocking again. And you'll rise, grab your net, and go. Because no one else will. You haven't truly known loneliness until a monk recoils at the scent of you. It begins before you even wake. The rags you sleep in, if they can be called such, reek of mildew, dried blood, and something fouler you've long since given up trying to identify. No one shares your straw pile in the cellar. Not even the cat who once stalked beside you during hunts dares curl near your boots now. You are a kingdom of your own, a tiny principality of rot and grease and piss, and your only loyal subjects are the fleas. Your smell clings to you like wet wool. The last time you tried to scrub it off, you used lye soap and river water and nearly took a layer of skin with it. didn't matter. By dusk, you reeked again, because it's not just what you touch, it's who you are. You are filth incarnate. You are the one who goes where no other will. You're the one who crawls headfirst into the walls of bakeries, the shit-clotted corners of tavern cellars, the sweet, sour, fermenting stink of plague carts. If there's a rat, you follow it, into grease traps, beneath privies, through carcass piles, into middens alive with larvae. Of course you stink. The worst part is you've grown used to it. You used to gag. When you were new to the work, still clutching your father's club with both hands, still catching rats with more enthusiasm than sense, you used to puke in the hay after each shift. That was back when you still had fingernails, before they grew blunt and dark and cracked from years of digging through refuse and splintered wood. That was before you understood what rot really meant. Now you hardly notice. You eat with the same hands you use to strangle vermin. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve and don't think twice. When your boots fill with sewage, you don't curse. You just keep walking. But others notice. They always notice. You're banned from most churches. Not officially, of course. What priest would dare refuse a poor soul sanctuary? But they don't have to say it. They just hold the incense a little longer when you pass. They widen the space between pews. The old women whisper and cross themselves. And if you ever sit near the altar, the deacon discreetly wafts oil of rosemary over the floorboards the moment you leave. Shopkeepers wave you off before you even speak. Children laugh and call you muck nose behind their hands. Tavern keepers tell you the kitchen is closed, no matter what time of day. And even when you bring in a dozen dead rats slung from your belt like war trophies, no one thanks you. You keep a pouch of dried mint leaves to press beneath your nose on the worst days, but even that just mixes the stink into something sharper, like trying to put perfume on spoiled meat. Sometimes you wonder if the rats smell it too. They seem to recognize you. You've seen them scatter before your foot even lands on the floorboard, their little eyes gleaming like they know what's coming. Your scent is a warning, a harbinger of death. In a tattered jerkin, you're a walking storm cloud to them, a herald of the cudgel and the iron trap. Your clients, if you can call them that, tolerate you only as long as necessary. A lady once gagged into her silk handkerchief while paying you, wouldn't even hand you the coins directly, dropped them into a bucket of vinegar first, and told her maid to fish them out later. You should have been insulted, but you just nodded and walked away. Because vinegar is expensive, and you appreciated the gesture. There are moments, quiet ones, rare ones, when you catch yourself dreaming of a clean life, not a grand one. You don't ask to be a knight or a merchant or anything stupid. Just a job that doesn't leave a stench so thick it settles into your pores, your bedding, your breath. You once met a potter who smelled only of clay and smoke. It nearly brought tears to your eyes, but you don't live in that world. You live in the gaps between walls, beneath floorboards, inside ruined barns and dark holes where no man dares reach. You live in the city's underbelly, and when someone hears the scratching, the chewing, the soft hiss of 1,000 tiny feet, they send for you. And when you leave, they pray you don't come back. Once, in the height of summer, you caught 76 rats in 1 week. You had to carry them in sacks, stitched sacks, because the damn things chewed through plain cloth, and every sack leaked blood and fleas and stink. By the time you dumped them in the pit, your boots were soaked in sludge and your hands blackened. You slept on the edge of the village for 3 nights straight. No one would let you near the square. No wonder your mother cried when you chose this life. The stink has become your name, even among other low trades, gong farmers, leech collectors, tanners. You're the one they cross the street to avoid. It isn't just that you deal with death. It's that you bring it with you. You're the reminder that under every floorboard is a nest, and under every nest is a grave. And yet, someone must do it. Without you, the town would crawl. The bread would be chewed through, the grain fouled, the walls gnawed hollow. Rats breed like sin, quiet, fast, and always in the dark. You're the only line between them and the kitchens of nobles, the dormitories of monks, the cribs of newborns. Still, they never thank you. Not truly. So you breathe in your own stench each morning, strap your traps to your back, and head into another alley, another tunnel, another spoiled granary. You gag once, maybe twice, but mostly out of memory. And when the rats scatter, when the tail flicks vanish into the darkness, you follow. And the smell? It stays. When the church bells toll with that dull, ominous clang, the one they only use for death, you don't flinch. You just tighten the rope around your waist, loop your sack higher over your back, and trudge down the narrow, piss-slick alley toward St. Aldwyn's Quarter. You've been summoned again. You're always summoned. There's nothing glamorous about this life. You're not some hero from the tavern songs. You don't wear silver buckles or carry a sword. You carry a stick, a burlap sack, and a long hook you made yourself out of broken iron. You've got 3 teeth in your mouth that aren't blackened. Maybe 4, if you count the one that still aches when it rains. You smell of vinegar, blood, old hay, and fur. And people think the rats are the filthy ones. But rats don't spit at you. Rats don't throw turnips or make the sign of the cross when you pass. People do. They think you bring the plague. What they don't understand, what no one wants to admit, is that you're the only reason it hasn't swallowed their street whole. You duck beneath the rotten beam of a collapsed stable, careful not to scrape your scalp on the splinters overhead. This is where the rats start getting clever. Not just fat and quick, but clever. They learn your scent. They wait. And they don't mind the plague. It doesn't touch them like it touches people. You walk past a corpse slumped against a wall, no more than a boy. His eyes are open, his skin the color of spoiled milk. You don't check if he's breathing. If he is, he won't be for long. The swelling around his neck and under his arms gives him away. Buboes, plague's signature. The back alleys of plague quarters have a scent you don't ever get used to. Not just death, but layers of it. There's the sharp, dry stink of fever sweat and vomit. The sickly sweetness of rotting meat. The acrid punch of tallow candles burned down to the wick. And under it all, the warm, furry musk of rats. Always rats. You keep one eye on the gutters. The smarter ones crawl through broken tiles and sewage runoffs, smart enough to stay out of reach, but not smart enough to outrun your ferret. You let her loose. Little Ingress, black-eyed and hungry. She disappears into the dark with a snuffling squeak. You wait, motionless, gripping your hook. A shriek, a squeal, and then, scratching, you jam your hook into the crevice and twist. Out comes one, maybe two. You bash them quickly. It's not graceful. The sack writhes as you toss their twitching bodies in. You're already covered in blood and fleas. What's two more? A door creaks open behind you. A woman peeks out, eyes sunken, lips trembling. "They're under the floorboards, sir," she rasps. "We hear them at night, like children crawling." You nod. She doesn't invite you in. No one ever does. You crouch, wedge your hook into the base of the outer wall, and lift a panel of wood that probably hasn't been touched since Edward was king. The stench hits you like a blow. Something's rotting down there. Something bigger than rats. You lower a tallow stub into the hole. It flickers and shows you bones. Piles of them. And eyes. Tiny, gleaming, unblinking. The rats have made a cathedral down here. You count 5 before the first one charges you. You bash. You hook. You kick and curse. Your sack balloons. Blood spatters your sleeves. One climbs your leg and bites deep into your thigh before you can shake it free. You crush it under your heel. The pain's sharp, but you don't stop. You've been bitten before. You'll be bitten again. The woman behind you weeps softly. Not for the rats, not for the mess. For her son, maybe, or her husband. Someone she buried too quickly. You seal the hole, pour lye around the base, and toss a sprig of rue onto the doorstep. Some think it wards off disease. You know better. But she needs to believe something will. You walk on. Past weavers with red rags tied to their doors. Past widows burning their bedding in barrels. Past children with noses bleeding and lips cracked, chasing crows with sticks and no shoes. You pause at a drain and listen. The scraping is soft, but it's there, down in the wet dark. You lower a rope with a baited nail and wait. The last time you did this, you hauled up a snake-eaten rat the size of a cat. It tried to chew through your boot. This time, it's a corpse. Human, half-eaten. You leave it. You're not the gravekeeper. Not anymore. By the time you reach the end of St. Aldwyn's quarter, your sack is heavy, your arms shake, and your bite wound is oozing. You pass the baker's boy. He crosses himself when he sees you. You nod. In the distance, bells toll again. Another house has gone silent. Another summons will come tomorrow. And when it does, you'll answer. Because no one else will. That's the job. And in the plague quarters, death is not your enemy. It's your neighbor. You don't start hunting until the sun goes down. That's just the way it is. The rats come out when the streets go quiet, when the noise of the town slips into silence, and when the shadows press against the crooked buildings, like mold against damp wood. That's your hour. That's when your real work begins. By day, you're nothing. People won't look you in the eye, won't speak your name unless it's to spit on it. A rat catcher. You're lower than a grave digger, more hated than a leper, and barely paid more than the dung boys. But by night, you crawl into the very bowels of the city. You become something else entirely, the only soul desperate or mad, enough to follow the sound of scratching paws and twitching tails into the places no one else will tread. Your boots crunch over broken straw as you descend the cellar stairs of the baker's shop. It stinks of old yeast and sour milk, but you've smelt worse, much worse. The rats are behind the wall again. You can hear them, scraping, squealing, shifting in the dark. They've chewed a hole through the wooden beams, squeezed their bloated bellies between the bricks, and made a nest in the old grain sacks. The baker's too scared to go near them now. Claims they hiss when he gets close. Swears one tried to bite his foot through his slipper. You know better. These ones are bold and hungry. They're always hungry. You light your stub of a tallow candle and squeeze through the gap behind the crates. The space is barely wide enough for your shoulders, but you've done worse. A week ago, you had to shimmy beneath the floorboards of the blacksmith's shop, coated in soot, crawling on your belly, gagging on the stink of scorched rat hair. The rats bolt when your shadow hits the wall. You see the flicker of red eyes, the flash of greasy fur. One skitters past your boot, fat, twitchy, missing half its tail. You swing your club but miss. Doesn't matter. You'll get him later. There's a nest in the corner behind the salt barrel. You jab your hook in and pull it back slick with filth and shredded cloth. 4 pink babies tumble out onto the stone floor, squealing like pigs. No mother in sight. Probably gone scavenging in the slop drains. You crush them with your boot. It's not personal. It's never personal. From the baker's cellar to the brewer's shed, the same story plays out. Rotting meat, spilled grain, sour hops, all of it draws them. They nest under shelves, behind barrels, in holes they've chewed through the clay walls. You follow their stink. You learn to think like them. You can smell them before you see them. You know the difference between old droppings and fresh, between nesting trails and feeding paths. But sometimes they go deeper. You remember the time you were called to the charnel house near the churchyard. The sexton refused to go near it, said he heard noises behind the stone crypt where the bones were stacked. Said he saw movement in the candlelight. Thought it was ghosts. It wasn't. You went in with your sack and your dog. Poor beast didn't want to cross the threshold, tail between her legs. You should have known then. But coin's coin. The smell inside was ancient. Damp cloth, sour mold, and the unmistakable iron tang of long-dried blood. They'd burrowed into the cloth-wrapped skulls, nested in broken ribs and hollow pelvises, hundreds of them. You couldn't swing your club without striking bone. The echo was like drums in a tomb. They bit you too. One sank its teeth into your calf. You crushed it with your knee, but the wound festered for weeks. Fever, sweat, black veins. You survived somehow. Others don't. The tanner's boy lost 2 fingers trying to catch one, bare-handed. A girl in Farringdon scratched by a rat died by the week's end. Face gone blue, lips cracked, eyes yellow with pus. But even that doesn't compare to the sewers. That's where the real horror is. The town doesn't call you for sewer jobs unless it's bad. Rats pouring out of privy holes, surfacing in kitchen basins, gnawing through wooden pipes. You lower yourself into the stone chute with a rope around your waist, holding a torch in one hand and your club in the other. The stench hits you like a fist. Raw waste, dead animals, mildew and sulfur. You move through ankle-deep sludge, squinting against the steam. Your torch hisses when it gets too close to the damp ceiling. And then, ahead, movement. A writhing, shifting pile. Rats, dozens of them, feeding on something too large to be one of their own. Could be a pig carcass, could be a man. You don't want to look closer. You swing wildly. The torch sputters. Your dog growls behind you, then yelps as something bites her haunch. You grab her by the scruff and haul her back. One rat clings to her fur. You beat it off and stomp it flat, blood and filth mixing beneath your heel. You leave the sewer with 4 dead rats and a sick dog. The alderman says it's not enough, says they'll just come back. You tell him they never left. And still, the nights don't end. There's always another cellar, another hole behind a bakery, another rotting floorboard beneath a drunken noble's wine store. The rats go where the people are. They feast on crumbs and filth, rot and sin. And you chase them like death in the dark, one squeal at a time. You sleep by day in a shed behind the butcher's. He lets you stay so long as you don't come in smelling like dead rat, which means you sleep in your clothes, stinking, sore, half-eaten by fleas. No one thanks you. No one pays you well. But when they hear scratching in the walls, when they see red eyes in the dark, only then they remember you. You don't get into rat catching for the company. You get into it for the copper, maybe the crust of bread, if you're lucky. But company, well, that comes whether you like it or not, especially the 4-legged kind. You learn quick in this trade that rats are smarter than most nobles and twice as mean, and you can't face them alone. That's where the strange bedfellows come in. You don't sleep much in this job, not with the itch of flea bites on your legs and the memory of beady eyes watching from cellar corners. But when you do rest, you don't rest alone. There's always a warm ferret at your feet or a mangy cat curled beneath your cloak. You and your beasts, partners in pestilence. Because to outwit a rat, you need something with teeth just as sharp. Take the ferret, for instance. Long, sleek, and half-possessed, a good ferret doesn't just chase rats. It thinks like one. The best ones slip into holes no human finger could reach. They're born for the tunnels, between walls, under floorboards, down into the cesspit. You send them in with nothing but a prayer and hope they come back out. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they come out with a wriggling rat between their jaws, proud as a king. Other times, well, sometimes you're left calling a name into the dark and never hearing it again. You raise a ferret from kit if you're wise. Teach it the scent of grain and blood. Let it crawl across your boots. Let it sleep in your pocket. Feed it scraps. Show it love. Because once you send it down into a warren full of starving rats, it has to trust you'll be there when it comes back. If it doesn't love you, it'll run. Or worse, join the enemy. The nobles scoff. They think ferrets are dirty. Little do they know it's the ferret that keeps the rats out of their spice chests and away from their silks. They don't want to see the sausage get made, but they'll pay. Oh yes, especially when the grain stores get nibbled clean and the rats chew through the stable door. And then there are the terriers, mad little things, teeth and fury bundled into a sack of fur. You don't train a terrier, you aim it, drop it into a rat pit, and step back. It's a blur of snarling and snapping. A good terrier can kill 20 rats in an hour. The great ones don't even get bitten. They just move, like a storm in a hayloft. You clean up the corpses afterward. Sometimes you help. Sometimes you just watch, horrified. Your favorite's a runt named Pip. Half blind, half crazed, but loyal. He's taken more bites than most men you know, and still wags his tail. you'd lose your coin purse before you'd lose Pip. He's saved your skin more times than you can count. But even Pip has his limits. He won't go near the plague barns. That stench? It's not just death. It's a warning. Even the dogs know when the rats are too far gone. Bubonic, some whisper. You whisper it too, but only when no one's around. If someone thinks you're bringing sickness, they'll toss you in a ditch with the rest of the bodies. Now cats are different. You don't own a cat. You ask nicely and maybe it'll stay. Maybe. Most of them come and go, slinking along rooftops, dropping from beams in the granary, blinking like they've seen the secrets of God and decided they were boring. Some cats hate you. They see the ferret and the dog and bristle. Others, well, sometimes you wake up to find a rat carcass at your feet, courtesy of a ghost-pawed mouser with a torn ear and a name you never gave it. Payment, maybe, or warning. You never can tell with cats. One cat, a black female with 3 legs and a bent tail, followed you for months. You called her Lady Cratchit. She hated Pip and tolerated your ferrets, but by God, she was a killer. You watched her once, just once, creep along a beam and drop like a stone onto a rat as big as a boot. No sound, just claws and done. She dragged it away like it owed her money. When the baker's wife poisoned Lady Cratchit for superstition, black cat, devil's pet, you didn't cry, not then. But that night, you left a rat's head on her doorstep. A warning, a curse, maybe. She left town the next week. Never saw her again. And there are the others. Owls, if you're brave and have patience. Hawks, if you're daft. Some catchers even swear on toads or tame weasels. But nothing works quite like your motley crew. The ferret with fleas. The one-eyed terrier. The cat that may or may not be watching you sleep. You feed them first, even when you're starving. You patch their wounds before your own. 'Cause out there, in the dark beneath the city, it's not just rats. It's rot, collapse, plague, people screaming about demons when it's just hunger and filth. And yet, it's not the filth that scares you. It's the silence, when even the rats won't move, when the ferret won't go in the hole, when Pip growls at an empty wall. That's when you wonder if there are things older than rats down there. Deeper things. Smarter things. But you can't afford to think like that. Not when you're paid in crusts and risk. You just grab the sack, coax the ferret back into your coat, and whistle low for Pip. The alley stinks like vinegar and rot, and there's another cellar to clear. The sun's not up yet, but you are. Always up before the rats. Always outnumbered. Always outbitten. But never alone. Not with your strange bedfellows beside you. 8 or 7 years of prying bloated vermin out of root cellars and crawling through refuse piles. The stink has worked its way into your skin. The townspeople catch a whiff before they ever catch your name. It doesn't matter how many rats you've killed this week. It doesn't matter that you cleared the miller's pantry of 100 of the squealing beasts just last Tuesday. All they remember is that the rats are back. And so, it must be your fault. You step into the muddy square before dawn, sack slung over your shoulder, ferret cage bumping your thigh. With every limp, you've slept in the open again. Nobody rents a bed to a man who reeks of mold and bile. Your only companions were the stars, and the sound of rats scuttling beneath the floorboards of the bakery. You could hear them chewing through the flour sacks, while the baker's wife turned in her warm bed upstairs. But now that the infestation has returned, the baker forgets he begged you in tears to clear them out. He forgets the bites on your hands, the filth you crawled through, the copper coins he grudgingly dropped in your palm. The only thing he remembers is that you were here. And now, so are the rats. A boy throws a stone at your foot as you pass, not to injure, just to remind you where you stand. Oi, rat man, lost your pets again? You ignore him. You always do, because if you turn around and cuff the lad, his mother will accuse you of witchcraft, and the priest might just agree with her. People don't like things they don't understand, and they certainly don't understand you. They whisper sometimes when you walk past. You hear the phrases like cockroaches in your ears. He keeps them on purpose, they mutter. Breeds them in secret, lets them loose just so he'll be paid to catch them again. If only you had such cunning. You can barely feed yourself. You've eaten rats before, more than once. A bit of wine, some onion, and roasted over a spit. It's not the worst meat, but they don't want to hear that. They want to believe you dance with shadows, that you whisper in the sewers and send the vermin to plague the clean and righteous. You tried to explain it once, when the alderman's wife found a rat drowned in her soup pot. You told her rats are clever, that they follow warmth and scraps, that they can gnaw through anything softer than stone. You tried to explain that without laws for waste or sealed storerooms, they'll always return. She didn't care. She had you dragged before the watch captain, and while he didn't throw you in the stocks, he let her slap you clean across the face in the name of decency. You tasted blood for days. Sometimes when the rats return, when they always return, you wonder why you bother at all. Your work leaves you flea-bitten, half-starved, and alone. You aren't part of the guilds. No seal of approval, no charter. Just a man and his tools, scraping rats from between roof beams and behind grain bins. But even as the people curse you, they still call for you. When the plague comes, when someone down by the docks starts coughing and their armpits swell and blacken, they'll find you in the woods or under a bridge and beg you to come back. With eyes wide as pewter dishes, they'll offer coin they don't have and promise a hot meal if you'll only come rid them of what they fear most. And you'll go, because you don't know how to do anything else. You were 10 when the first rat bit your father. He died by the next week. The sores spread too fast, and the blood ran black. After that, you learned to kill them, one by one. You started with a club. Then you found a net. Then someone gave you a half-trained terrier, and you thought yourself rich. The ferret came later. Her name is Tansy, and she sleeps in your cloak at night. She doesn't judge you, but the townsfolk do. You pass the tanner's yard, and one of the apprentices hawks and spits at your feet. Rats are back in the dye vats. I suppose you'll want silver this time. He sneers. You open your mouth to tell him that you haven't eaten today. That silver is more than fair for crawling through the chemical stinking pits that blister your skin. But what's the point? You say yes and get to work. You always do. Later that night, You squat behind the butcher's shop, gnawing the marrow out of a bone he left for the dogs. The sky is black above. The wind stinks of soot and rot. You can hear a dozen rats just out of reach, waiting to creep back once your bones grow cold. Because they will. One day, you'll fall into a midden heap and no one will notice. Tansy will go hungry and the townsfolk will say good riddance. Maybe, just maybe, they'll realize the rats are worse without you. But probably not. Because in the end, the rats always return. And when they do, someone has to blame. And it will be you. The moment you step out of the alley, cloaked in the scent of damp fur and sewer rot, the villagers pull back like you're covered in leprosy. You can see it in their eyes, the sign of the cross drawn hastily when they think you aren't watching. The murmured prayers beneath their breath as they pass you. And that look, that wide-eyed, salt-pinching, wood-touching stare, like you're something ancient and wrong. You've caught 100 rats this week, and still they fear you more than the creatures you drag away in bloodied sacks. They whisper now. They call you Rat Whisperer, Death's Hound, Gnawbone, Shadow Feeder. Some even say your breath kills crops, that your eyes glow when the moon is full, that your hands are cursed, and that the moment you laid your traps on their doorstep, the house felt colder. One boy ran screaming when you came to the well for water. Another swore he saw you talk to a dead rat, and that it blinked back. You know better than to argue. Superstition runs thicker than blood in this town. And rat catchers? You're not just lowborn. You're liminal, caught between filth and survival, between death and coin. You walk where no one dares, under floorboards, behind ovens, through basements and plague pits. And when a man makes his living face first in death, folk begin to think he's part of it. The priest's sermon didn't help. Last Sunday, he stood before the sweating masses and warned of impurity. There are those among us, he thundered, who consort with vermin and disease. The Lord tells us to beware the hands of pestilence, to guard our doors against those who carry the devil's filth beneath their fingernails. Everyone turned their heads, not toward the sinning merchant, not toward the drunkard in the back pew. Number. They turned to you, rat catcher. The thing is, you don't blame them. You know what they see. You've stood in front of that cracked mirror in your hovel, skin grayed from days without sun, hair stiff with rat blood, fingers chewed by teeth smaller than thimbles. You don't look human anymore, not in the way they mean. You've grown lean and quick-eyed, like the rats you chase. You've learned to move quiet, to wait, to listen for the scratching. You've learned that a mother rat will eat her own if cornered. You've learned that fear and hunger smell the same. And still, you do the job. Because someone must. Because rats don't care if you're a priest or a pauper. They'll chew through your cradle and piss on your bread. All the same. You learned your trade from old Jonik. May his bones lie quiet. He caught rats by moonlight and always spat 3 times before entering a cellar. Said the rats were watching, always watching. That if you didn't show respect, they'd curse your traps and your lungs alike. Yannick wore a necklace of dried tails, said it confused the plague spirits. Some say the tailbone of a rat protects you. Others say it dooms you. Superstition? Maybe. But when you've seen a man swell purple and die 3 days after one bite, you don't ask questions. You learn the rights. You carry chalk in your pouch to mark the cellar doors with protective symbols. You never kill a pregnant rat if you can avoid it. You never set traps on the Sabbath. You rub ash on your eyelids when hunting in churches. And you don't step over a dead rat without whispering a blessing. People think you do it to summon dark powers. Truth is, you're just trying to stay alive. But the people don't care about that. They don't care that you saved the tanner's baby from the rat nest in the floorboards, or that you cleared out the grain house before the infestation spread. They only remember the smell, the sacks, the blood. They don't see a man, they see an omen. And so, you sleep alone, eat alone, work in the hours between torchlight and dawn, when even the dogs are too afraid to bark. The village midwife once told you that you'd never find a wife, not with the stink of death in your clothes. You didn't argue. Sometimes you think the rats are the only things that don't flinch when they see you. They fight back, sure. One nearly took your thumb last spring. But there's no judgment in their little black eyes, no disgust, just hunger and fear and instinct, the same things that drive the townsfolk, the same things that drive you. But even you admit something's changing. Lately, the rats don't flee as quickly. They watch from corners. Sometimes they don't even run when you move, like they know something, like they're waiting. You caught one last night, bigger than a cat, with twisted teeth and eyes like polished ink. It didn't squeal when you struck it, just stared at you with the stillness of something ancient. You burned it whole. They say when a rat dies, it speaks a name to the earth. You wonder if they've spoken yours. So you walk the alleys by lamplight, shoulders hunched, eyes scanning every shadow. The pouch at your side jingles with coins and chalk dust and the iron nails you carry for luck. You're not welcome in their homes, not really. But when the scratching comes behind the walls, when the night echoes with high-pitched squeals, when the bread goes moldy and the dog won't eat, they'll call for you. They always do. Because while they may believe you're cursed, they know one thing for certain. You can kill what they fear. You've caught 37 rats today. Your hands are slick with grime and dried blood, and the scratches on your wrists from the ferret's claws still sting beneath the crusted dirt. Your boots are soaked from kneeling in cellar runoff, and your stomach, hollow since yesterday, growls with such force it could frighten a priest. You'd think someone might be generous after a haul like that. Think again. The baker gives you half a loaf of bread, stale, of course. He tosses it to you like he's feeding a dog, muttering something about how he didn't ask for that many dead ones. You ask for coin, politely. He laughs. Coin? For rats? As if you're the fool for thinking your work has value. As if what you just did, wading into his yeast-stinking basement to drag out a whole nest chewing through flour sacks, was a privilege. That's your pay for the day. A mouthful of dry crust and the promise of nothing tomorrow. You take it. You always take it. Because if you argue, they'll call the watch. And who are they going to believe? A rat catcher with lice in his beard, or the baker who needs dough for the parish priest. See, the people of this town don't remember you until they hear the scratching, until the walls move, until they see a tail whip across the hearth in the middle of supper. Then they come running. "Rat catcher! Rat catcher!" All wide-eyed and shrill. Promises. Always promises. "We'll pay handsomely. Please, just clear them out." But once the work is done, once the floor's covered in twitching bloody vermin, the coin disappears. The purse was at home. The mistress will pay next week. The mayor said he'd handle it. Always an excuse. You're lucky if you get a few farthings. The kind of coins so small and worn they barely have a face on them anymore. A child couldn't buy a fig with what they give you. And don't even think about setting your own prices. You tried that once. Named a sum before pulling the rats out of the brewer's storehouse. A fair price, you thought. 1 penny per tail. The brewer's son broke your nose for it. Said you were extorting honest Christians. His boots still had grain mash on them when they kicked you into the gutter. So now, you don't ask. You just work. Crawl through filth. Fill your sack. Pull the corpses out and line them up like a butcher's prize. And then you wait. Sometimes they toss you a copper. Sometimes it's a lump of cheese, gone green around the edges. Once, a noblewoman offered you a half-eaten apple and the advice that you should smile more. You considered throwing the sack of rats at her feet, but you needed that sack. You always need that sack. The truth is, you don't eat every day. You don't sleep indoors unless it's a barn and the oxen are too tired to complain. When it rains, you crawl beneath market stalls and curl up like the very creatures you hunt. And in the cold months, when the rats vanish into deeper shadows and people stop calling for your help, that's when things really get bad. You've sold your boots twice. Once for stew, once for shelter. They weren't worth much the second time. All worn leather and stitched holes. But the stable boy took pity on you. Let you sleep beside the pigs for a night. You remember the warmth of their breath, the stink of their hay, and how it was still better than a winter gutter. There's no guild for your kind, no lord who claims you, no charter, no rights. You're not a craftsman. You're not a tradesman. You're a necessity no one likes to admit they need. You exist in the cracks. And when things go wrong, when illness spreads or a child gets bit, they look at you first. You, who held the nest in your hands. You, who let one rat slip past. You, who brought the plague, they whisper. And still they call you when the scratching starts again. Even the church won't help. You sat through Mass once, hoping for warmth. The priest stared at you the whole time, like you'd brought a demon into the pews with you. Afterwards, he warned the children not to speak to those who live among filth. You were too tired to argue, too hungry to care. Sometimes, when the days are slow and the hunger gnaws at your ribs, you try to think of other work. But who would take a rat catcher? You've got no letters, no patron, just calloused hands, a sack that stinks of death, and eyes that see every movement in the shadows. So you keep catching rats, one by one, two by two. You learn to listen for their feet on stone, to smell their nests before you see them. You learn their tricks, their hiding places, their rhythms. And still you starve, because no one pays for rats. Not really. They pay for the absence of rats. And once they're gone, so are you. Forgotten again, until the next infestation, the next scratching, the next cold stare as they toss you half a coin and wrinkle their nose at the scent of your clothes. You keep moving, Keep working, because if you stop, you starve. And if you starve, you die. And in this world, in these times, no one mourns a rat catcher. They just wait for the scratching to return. Now, you've been bit again. Third time this month, by your count. Not that you're keeping tally like some monastery scribe. The wound's already swelling up beneath the rag you've knotted around your hand. Warm to the touch. Stinks a bit. You'd wash it if you had water that wasn't thick with horse piss and chimney soot. But no. You'll rub it with whatever vinegar's left in your pouch, slap on a poultice of mashed garlic and old woman's spit, and carry on. Because no one gives two fleas about a rat catcher's wounds. Least of all the rats. You remember your first bite. Came from the cellar of an alehouse near the docks. You were 15, maybe 16, skinny as a spit and dumber than a fence post. That rat was the size of a newborn piglet, hiding under a loose floorboard beneath a barrel of barley. You reached in bare-handed, no gloves back then, and it lunged like Satan's own hound, sank its teeth into your thumb and held on for dear life. You screamed like a noblewoman seeing a mouse. The tavern keeper laughed until he wept into his apron. The scar's still there, never quite healed right. And it wasn't just the bite that got you. No, it was the fever that followed. 2 weeks laid up in a straw bed beside the tannery. Skin hot, shivering like a man in winter, vomiting black bile and seeing saints in the rafters. You survived. Most don't. You think about that sometimes, the ones who didn't. Old Will from Canterbury lost a finger, then a hand, then the whole arm. The flesh went black like rotted turnips, and the surgeon had to cut it off with a cleaver. No one could afford a cauterizing iron. So he bled to death 2 days later. They say the rats sniffed him out before the priest did. Or Martha, the girl who used to hunt with a cat named Tobias. Quick with a net, smart as they come, got bit on the ankle. Nothing deep. She laughed it off, but her leg puffed up like a cooked goose, purple and leaking, and she couldn't walk by week's end. By the time the parish doctor arrived with his pouch of leeches and prayers, she'd started screaming about angels. They found her dead on the thatch roof 2 mornings later. No one knows how she got up there. The rat catchers said it was a fever dream. The priest said it was possession. You've seen it all. Black boils, swollen eyes, rotting skin, madness, death. And all of it starts the same way. A quick snap of teeth in the dark. See, rats aren't just pests. They're disease with legs. They eat corpses in the graveyard, crawl through privy ditches, chew on plague rags in the physician's bin. And they bite when they're cornered, especially the old ones. The ones with bald patches and yellow eyes. You know the kind. The ones that don't run. The ones that look at you like they know your mother's name. Sometimes the bite comes fast. Sharp jab in the wrist while you're lifting a loose stone, or a flash of pain behind your knee when you're squatting in a privy pit. Other times it's slow. They cling, sink their teeth in, and thrash like tiny demons. You have to shake them loose or crush them with your boot. And when you do, you pray they didn't leave a tooth behind. The infection sets in quickly. First the swelling, then the heat. Then the color changes. Pink to red, red to purple, purple to black. The old catchers say when the pus turns green, you've got a week at best. Unless you cut the flesh off yourself. You've tried everything. Vinegar, ashes, moldy bread. One healer told you to pack the wound with raw onion and sleep facing north. Another told you to recite the Lord's Prayer backwards. You did both. Still got sick. Then there's the plague. Always the plague. No one's sure if the rat bite causes it directly, but the people don't care. You get sick, you're a danger. Rat catcher or not, they'll bar the door, throw your food through a window, and pray you die quietly. Some toss your belongings into the fire just to be safe. You've watched a man burn his own brother's net and boots. Some say rat bites bring madness, and you believe them. You've seen fellows walk into rivers with stones in their pockets. Others start shouting in tongues, convinced their bellies are filled with worms. One bloke peeled the skin off his own arm with a kitchen knife, convinced the rats had laid eggs beneath it. There were none, just blood and bone and screaming. Of course, most people just think you're cursed to begin with. They cross themselves when you pass, hold their breath if you walk too close. One widow spat at your feet last winter and called you Plague's Shepherd. She still hired you to clear her root cellar, though. Everyone hates you until they need you. There's no guild for your kind, no protection, no healer that gives a damn. If the bite gets bad, you wrap it tight and keep working. You've caught rats with broken fingers and festering sores. One time, your entire leg, from knee to ankle, was oozing something thick and sweet-smelling. You tied it with leather cord and limped through a bakery crawlspace for a halfpenny and a stale loaf. And you'll keep doing it, because the rats don't stop. They breed faster than rabbits, chew through stone, and swim like eels. You've seen one crawl up from a church well and another skitter across a bishop's altar mid-sermon. The people might pretend they live in a world of saints and kings, but deep down, they know. The rats run it. And you? You're the only line between their children and the next outbreak. So you carry on, through bite and blood, blister and boil. You keep swinging your club, setting your traps, whispering to your ferrets like they're the only friends you've got. Because this is your job. And even if no one thanks you, even if they spit in your path and curse your name, you know the truth. They're all one bite away from being just like you, and you're already too far gone. You've killed 16 rats today, maybe 17 if that tail counts. You can't remember which ones were still squirming when you scooped them into the hemp sack, but the squelching weight slung over your shoulder is unmistakable. Warm, damp. A few still twitch. One lets out a high-pitched squeal that makes the fishmonger's boy wrinkle his nose as you pass. You smell like every death you've carried. It's not the catching that ruins your appetite. It's what comes after. The kill is quick. Blunt club to the head, snap of a ferret's jaws, or a lucky trap under a flour barrel. That's fine. That's clean in its own way. But what no one ever talks about, what they conveniently forget when they hand you your copper coin and wave you off, is what to do with the bodies. Because no one wants the bodies. No one wants 16 twitching, bloodied reminders that something in this town is deeply wrong. And definitely, no one wants the stench that clings to you long after the rats are gone. You duck behind the baker's alley, the usual spot. The stones are slick with morning runoff, and the air carries the sharp scent of urine and yeast. You've tossed your share of carcasses down here, watched the blood trail off into the gutter. Wondered if rats cannibalize their own. They do. You've seen it. But the baker's wife caught you last week. She screamed loud enough to draw a constable, called you filth, said you cursed the dough, so that alley's no longer safe. You consider the river. It's what most do, in the end. Under moonlight, when no one's watching, you swing your sack over the rail and listen to the wet plop. Sometimes they float. Sometimes they sink. Once, you swear you saw one paddle away. You try not to think about that. The river's bloated with more than rats, dead dogs, rotten food, sometimes even worse. Things you don't name, things that drift with swollen fingers pointed to the sky. The Thames doesn't ask questions, but now there's talk in town. Priests saying rats in the water spread the devil's breath. Children getting boils. Mothers pointing fingers. You can't risk it tonight. The pit it is then. There's one behind the tanner's yard, an open ditch, half filled with lime and every disease God ever invented. You've used it before, though not without payment. The tanner's boy is greedy and slow, always asking for double coin and acting like he's doing you a favor. He's not. No one's doing you any favors. You adjust your grip on the sack. It shifts, wetly. Something pops. You try not to gag. Your left boot squelches with rot. You stepped in something back at the butcher's cellar. But the tanner's pit isn't far. Just 2 streets over, past the candle makers and the chapel that smells of mold and incense. You move fast, head down. It's better if people don't recognize you. The last thing you want is a butcher's apprentice shouting, "Oi, you left one behind." You didn't. You never do. The pit yawns before you, rank and steaming. Bones float near the edge. Something human, you think. A jaw with teeth still intact. You don't look too long. You untie the sack. One by one, you pitch them in. The first lands with a sickening splash. The second bounces off a floating ribcage. The third is still warm and shudders once before sliding beneath the ooze. A tail brushes your knuckle. You jerk back, but it's too late. The scent clings now. Rotten fur, bile, and lime. There's a science to the tossing. You can't heave too hard. Splashing the edge means it gets on your boots, or worse, your face. Too light, and they don't sink. You've learned to arc them just right. Shoulders steady. Aim low. Like feeding a god that only takes the fowl. Halfway through the sack, you stop. There's one with a wound in its side, a perfect circle of rot already bloomed on its fur. The skin is sloughing. The eye has collapsed. You've seen this before. Plague rot. Bubonic, maybe. Or just your imagination. Either way, it's not going in the pit. Not this one. This one you take to the fire. There's an old kiln behind the potters, half collapsed, but still smoldering on dry days. You sneak in through the back lane, past the barrel where the potter pisses to cure his clay. You've burned rats there before. You always stay to watch. This one crackles when the flames catch its fur. The smell is unholy. Singed hair, sour fat, something like cooking meat gone wrong. You breathe through your sleeve. No one else could bear this. But you? You're used to it. You've seen rats burn while still alive, hissing like snakes, eyes bulging. You don't flinch anymore. The last rat goes in with a grunt. You watch until it crumbles into bone and ash. Only then do you wipe your hands. You'll sleep in the alley again tonight. No one rents to a rat catcher. You can't scrub out the stench. The innkeepers say you curse the rooms. The priest once sprinkled you with holy water just for walking past. You're not proud of what you do. But when the baker finds droppings in the flour, when the midwife sees rats nibbling at the stillborn's cloth, when the town starts whispering of death in the walls, then they remember you. They come crawling back, clutching coin, clutching hope, clutching that miserable lie that it's just a few rats, nothing more. But you know better, and you'll be back tomorrow, sack in hand, club ready, and nowhere, absolutely nowhere, to put the bodies. You're up before the sun again, boots still damp from last night's crawl through the tannery gutters, and your lungs cough up something that tastes like last month's spoiled turnips. Doesn't matter. Today's another hunting day, and you've got vermin to outwit. Two-legged problems? Ha, easy. It's the four-legged ones that will ruin you. Sneaky, twitch-tailed, red-eyed devils that multiply faster than a brewer's lie. And today, you've got to deal with both kinds of rat. The kind that scurry beneath floorboards, and the kind that somehow outsmart you at every turn. Let's start with the black rat. Rattus rattus, if you ever paid attention to the monks who tried to name everything in Latin. But you don't need fancy scroll scribbling to know this one. You've met it, smelled it, cursed it. This rat is the sly one, the shadow in the rafters, the blur that disappears just as your club lands. It's lean, it's wiry, and it's built like a pickpocket. The black rat is an acrobat, climbs walls, leaps rafters, nests in the thatch of your master's granary, and lives high like it's a lord itself. You've seen him snatch crusts from the top shelf and vanish through holes too small for your bony wrist. You chase one and end up knocking over 6 clay jars and a candlestick, all while the little bastard laughs at you from the ceiling. They're the ones you find in the noble homes, too. Places with beams and lofts where food is stored above ground. And oh, they love grain. They'll chew through a chest lid and leave nothing but husks and feces. More refined, if you could call it that. A black rat prefers to dine where it can look down on you. But don't let their dainty appetites fool you. They carry plague like it's perfume. You've seen buboes swell beneath collars and heard screams through shuttered windows. And behind every death rattle, there's a black rat slipping away, smug and scot-free. Now the brown rat, that's another beast entirely. Bigger, meaner, dumber maybe, but with the bite of a devil. Rattus norvegicus, some call it, though it's no more Norwegian than a Frenchman's breath is sweet. These brutes came lumbering into England later than the black ones, like foreign invaders armed with teeth instead of swords. Brown rats don't climb rafters. They burrow, down in the cesspits, the ditches, the rotted bellies of the city. They'll swim a moat if they smell a sack of oats on the other side. You find them under taverns, in butcher cellars, anywhere the floor leaks blood and broth. They nest in filth, breed in darkness, and fight like cornered hogs. You can hear them coming sometimes, scraping, gnawing, screeching. The noise echoes in the sewers, long after they're gone, like ghosts with mange. And if you're foolish enough to reach in their hole, don't be surprised if you draw back a hand missing a finger. Unlike their black cousins, brown rats aren't picky. They'll eat anything: bones, soap, old leather. You once saw one chew the toe off a corpse before the priest even arrived. You didn't stick around to watch what it did with the other 9. So, how do you catch them? Black rats you trap. Set your cages high, near rafters and roof beams. Use dried figs if you can find them. Those sticky fruits work better than moldy bread. You've even tied feathers to bait, pretending it's a nesting bird. Sometimes it works. Other times, you go home with nothing but dust and droppings. Brown rats, though, you don't trap them. You fight them. Nets, clubs, dogs, whatever you've got. You bring a terrier down into the wine cellar and let it loose. It's carnage, sure, but it gets the job done. Then you shovel the bodies into a sack, dump them in the river, and pray they don't wash up near the bishop's garden again. You've made maps in your head, nests of black rats up high, trails of brown rats below, but they're always shifting, always moving. You think you've cleared a baker's pantry, and 2 weeks later, the dough is crawling again. It's a war without end, and the enemy breeds faster than you can blink. Worse still, sometimes you find them both. A black rat perched on a beam, watching, while a brown rat gnaws a soup bone beneath. You feel like a fool caught between devils, one quick and clever, the other thick and mean. And there you are, in the middle, with a stick in one hand and a bag full of curses in the other. The nobles never see this part. They think rat catching is some crude peasant art, just banging a stick and whistling for a dog. But they don't see what you see: the nests writhing under floorboards, the infants squeaking blind and pink in the hay, the mothers teeth bared, eyes glowing in torchlight. You see them in your sleep too, those glowing eyes, like burning coals in the dark. You didn't sign up for this life. No one does. But the city needed someone to go where no one else would. Under the city, into the walls, into the holes that stink of rot and blood. You went, and you keep going. So today, you tie your scarf tight, grab your sack and your stick, and choose your poison, black or brown. Know your enemy, they say. And in your line of work, it's not just smart. It's the only reason you're still alive. The rats have grown bold tonight. You hear them scratching behind the larder walls before the bell even tolls midnight. Long before the baker's boys rise to fire their ovens. Long before the town steward makes his bleary-eyed rounds pretending not to smell the rot wafting from beneath the floorboards. But you know the scent intimately. Damp straw, mildew, spoiled barley, and piss. It's the perfume of your profession. You don't wear armor. You wear a leather apron stained with blood and soot and something unnameable. Your fingers are thick with grime, your nails ragged black from clawing through ash, old sacks, and rat burrows. And now, perched on the edge of a stool beside the tavern's hearth, you hold the apothecary's little glass vial up to the candlelight. Rat poison, he'd said, sliding it across the table like a man passing poison for a queen's goblet. Laced with orpiment and the dust of crushed hellebore root, just a few pinches. Orpiment, arsenic in disguise, yellow like sulfur and mined by men who die coughing up their lungs. The hellebore root? The apothecary won't even touch it without gloves. Deadly to sheep and infants alike. That's how you know it's worth its coin. You sprinkle it into the hard dough you've kneaded with pig's tallow and barley mash. It's sticky, and smells appealing, even to you. And that's the point. The trick isn't just to poison, it's to seduce. You need the rats to want this. Need them to crave it more than the weevil-laced grain they've already gnawed through. But here's the truth. You never tell the steward or the baker or the wide-eyed widow who hired you after something scurried over her sleeping child's face. Rat poison rarely works. Not the way they think it will. You've tried everything. You started with dried wolfsbane, sold in dusty bundles by a crone who called herself a herbal midwife, though everyone knew she hadn't delivered anything living in years. Crushed into powder, the wolfsbane made a bitter meal. It killed a few. Sluggish ones, probably old. The rest learned. Rats are clever. More clever than your employers would like to believe. One whiff of the poisoned bait, and they'd scatter, avoiding anything that smelled even slightly off. Then came the lead powder, soft and gray, mixed into bits of hard cheese and meat fat. The rats ate it, sure, but lead is slow. It kills like a lazy executioner. Aching joints, confusion, bleeding gums. By the time a rat drops from lead poisoning, 3 more have taken its place. They breed like thoughts in a guilty mind. Always more, always hungry. And still, the town expects miracles. They don't understand the way poisons truly work. They think 1 bite equals 1 dead rat. They don't see how careful the little beasts are, how they nibble just a crumb and then wait. If the first rat dies, the others won't touch a single bite. You've seen them drag poisoned bread to the edge of the nest and let another eat first. Like scouts, like kings testing food for assassins. You once tried making your own mix: wormwood, foxglove leaves, a bit of boiled toad bile. Don't ask how you got that. It reeked like death but looked harmless. You watched for hours from behind a barrel, breath held, heart tight. And yet, nothing. A few rats sniffed it, nibbled, and walked off unharmed, their black eyes gleaming in the torchlight like they knew. Knew you'd failed. Again. There was a time, before the plague, when you thought you'd rise beyond this. Maybe become an apprentice to a city rat master, like the ones they whispered about in London. Men who trained dogs and ferrets, who used smoke to drive rats from entire neighborhoods. But dreams don't survive in cellars. Not with the squeaking all around you. Not with the smell of droppings, thick under your boots. And now, the poison in your hand is just another gamble, another attempt to outwit a creature that thrives on filth, adapts to your every tactic, and never, ever stops breeding. You place the bait carefully, near the grain sacks, beneath the oven, beside the trapdoor to the cellar. You use gloves, because the apothecary warned you that dust alone could blister skin. You wipe your forehead with your sleeve. It's damp, not with sweat, but with the slow seeping dread that comes from knowing you'll be back here tomorrow. The rats never all die. Not really. You sleep lightly that night, if at all. And in the morning, you find 2 stiff bodies curled near the hearth. Not bad, but near the grain sacks, the bait's been gnawed, and nothing lies dead nearby. Just a trail of droppings and a familiar reek. They learned again. In a day or 2, someone will find a poisoned rat half alive and twitching, dragging itself across the stone floor. And they'll ask why this is happening. Why your magic dust didn't clear the infestation. Why the rats still scurry across their feet when they go to fetch water in the dark. They don't want truth. They want certainty. You offer blood and bile, not miracles. So you'll pocket your few coins, spit in the alley, and carry your sack of traps to the next house. The rats wait there too. And maybe this time, you'll try belladonna, or something even worse. Because in this job, you don't win. You just outlast. For now. The townspeople call it a purge, a grand cleansing, a day to rid the parish of vermin and sin alike. But you know better. This isn't hygiene. It's hysteria. The bells rang at dawn, calling you and every other rat catcher in the Shire to the commons, where a pyre has already been built as high as a man's shoulder. Dry timber, old bed straw, broken chairs, anything flammable has been piled there in a frenzy. And at the base, scattered like offerings, the rats begin to collect. You brought your share, of course. Burlap sacks crawling and writhing, tied tight with twine that cuts your fingers as you drag them across the square. 23 of the beasts, all snared or clubbed or ferret-flushed from the tavern cellar the night before. You dumped them into a wooden crate beside the pile, just like everyone else. Some of them are still alive, panting in the cold. Their eyes are black as ink and just as blank. The priest calls it righteous. Pestilence and pest, he cries, voice ragged from the smoke already rising. The Lord's wrath will be soothed by clean streets and burnt bodies. You wonder what the Lord makes of rats shrieking in fire. You wonder if he ever hears them. You're handed a torch by a squire who pinches his nose while passing it to you, as if your scent might catch fire too. You don't blame him. Rat catching isn't a clean business. Your doublet reeks of mildew and old urine. Your boots are crusted with whatever slurry poured down from the butcher's alley. The squire might wear silk gloves, but you? You wear calluses and bites. The fire starts slow. The first rats, already weakened, barely twitch as the flames lick around them. Then come the squeals, high and sharp, 100 tiny deaths all shrieking at once. Fur pops and crackles. The crowd cheers. You don't. You've seen this too many times? You know what happens next. They never burn all the way through. The rats panic before they die. The strong ones claw and scramble, climbing over the weaker to find some escape. Some leap from the pile, bodies half ablaze, streaking through the crowd like devil's kindling. A baker's daughter screams as one brushes her skirts. A rat catcher from the next village smacks another with a shovel, cursing in French. Children scatter. The priest keeps shouting, though he stepped back a few feet. One lands near your boots. Its back is blackened, eyes melted into shriveled sockets. It gasps. Somehow it's still alive. You crush it under your heel. The fire spreads wider than they planned. The straw ignites too fast, catches the edge of the thatch cart left too close. Someone's water pail spills in panic and does nothing but hiss. For a moment, it looks like the fire might take the market stall. It doesn't. Not this time, but it has before. You remember Southmere, 2 summers back. They built the pyre too close to the alehouse. 3 buildings gone, 2 dead. The rats? They ran into the chapel and nested under the altar for weeks. Burning never works like they think it will. Oh, it feels good. For them, the townsfolk. It makes them feel in control. For a few hours, they believe they've bested the plague, the filth, the dread. They cheer the smoke, wave their arms, and clap each other on the back as if they've slain dragons. But you know the truth. The fire drives them deeper. The rats who don't burn burrow further into the walls, into the cellars, into the bread. And the fleas? The fleas jump off the rats, onto the straw, onto the people, onto you. One crawled into your sleeve last winter, and 2 days later, you had a fever that near took your hearing. You lost 2 fellow catchers in that outbreak. Old Tom coughed blood till he couldn't stand. Mary with the ferrets swelled up so bad they buried her in a blanket rather than risk opening her shirt. Still, you do it. You keep catching. Keep burning. Keep coming back. Because what else would you do? No one hires a rat catcher for his conversation. You smell wrong. You move wrong. You spend your days in corners and shadows and filth. The priests won't bless your work. The lords won't look you in the eye. But the townsfolk? They scream when they see a tail, and they pay you in copper to take it away. And when the bell rings, they hand you a torch. By midday, the fire's low. Nothing left but black bones and melted fur. The air is thick and greasy. You wipe soot from your brow with the back of your sleeve, smearing rat blood across your face without meaning to. No one offers thanks. No one offers food. They just turn away, back to their stalls, their gossip, their bread. You gather your empty sacks, reeking of heat and horror, and you walk. The rats will be back by nightfall. They always are. And so will you. The torches flicker low in the alley as you pull your hood tighter over your head. You stink. Again. But it's not your fault. Rat blood doesn't wash easy. Not when it's caked beneath your fingernails and clotted in your boots. You haven't slept in 2 nights. There are rumors of plague 3 villages over, and now, suddenly, the townsfolk want you gone. Not because you failed at your job. You haven't. You cleared 27 rats from Mistress Tomlin's bakery last night. 2 from her flour bin, 8 from under the hearth, and 17 from the thatch above her sleeping son's bed. You found one gnawing on the boy's ear. She screamed. You caught it with your bare hands. This morning, the same Mistress Tomlin crossed herself at the sight of you, muttered something under her breath, drew her child close. You know the look. You've seen it before. They think you've got the devil in you. It started, as it always does, with whispers. First, someone claims it's not natural, that no man should be able to draw rats from beneath stone floors with nothing more than a knock and a whistle. Then someone else remembers that you never wed, that you live alone, that your ferret has mismatched eyes, that your hound howls at the moon, that you speak to the creatures you hunt. Truth is, you do speak to them. Rats don't come easy. You've got to coax them, trick them, learn their patterns. You set honey on the edge of your boot. You hum. You move slowly. And sometimes, yes, sometimes, you whisper. They call it witchcraft. You call it survival. But here, in the year of our Lord, 1349, survival can look an awful lot like heresy. You remember the first time the accusation came. A priest's boy had found you crouched in the crypt below the chapel, knee-deep in dead rats, pulling the bloated corpses into a sack. You were paid to clear them out. 3 groats for the job, if you could rid the cellar of the smell. But the boy didn't see that. He saw your silhouette in candlelight, your blood-slick hands, and the red eyes of your ferret blinking in the dark. He ran screaming up the nave. Within the hour, a group of villagers arrived with Father Alwyn at the front, holding a crucifix high and shouting about unclean spirits. They dragged you from the crypt, bound your hands in linen, and searched your hovel for charms. They found your pestle and mortar, your pouch of dried wormwood, and your blackened fingers. Herbs they called curses. Your tools they called relics of the devil. You spent 2 nights locked in the stocks outside the church. They pelted you with spoiled cabbage. One old crone spat and called you a rat whisperer. You can still feel the bruise behind your ear from the rock someone threw. You weren't burned, thankfully. The bishop declared there was insufficient evidence of heresy, and you were released. But you never walked into a chapel again after that. You kept your eyes down, took fewer jobs, spoke less, let people think you were half mad rather than half possessed. But it didn't stop them. They see you in the street now and they murmur. Some make the sign of the cross, others toss salt. Children dare each other to run up and touch your cloak. One swore he saw you speak to a rat in Latin. You don't know Latin. It's not just superstition. It's fear. Fear of what you deal with. Fear of what you might bring. Rats are death. You know that better than most. You've watched them pour out of corpse wagons, eyes gleaming. You've cracked one open and seen worms pour out. You've seen what happens when the fleas they carry bite a child, and the swelling starts behind the ear. 3 days later, the wailing begins. But no one thanks you for pulling rats from under their beds. They just shiver and ask what sort of man would choose such work. They never ask how many you've lost. Your brother was the first, bitten while sleeping, long before you knew what that meant. Then your mother, then your sister, in a fever so fast she didn't even get her last rites. That's why you started catching. Not for coin, for revenge, for atonement, for something to fight back with. And now, you're the one they curse in the streets. Sometimes you wonder if they're right, if there is something unnatural about it. When you walk into a house and feel the silence, when you kneel and place your ear to the floor and hear them beneath, skittering, scratching, gnawing, it feels like they're waiting for you, as if they know you, as if they've always known. You dream of them, climbing up your legs, filling your mouth. You wake with your hands clenched, nails bloodied. You talk in your sleep. You know because the innkeeper won't rent to you anymore. There was a time when you thought catching rats would make you useful, that the baker would pay you with bread, that the mayor would thank you in council, that the priest might nod in passing. But now you know, a rat catcher doesn't rise. He sinks into gutters, into memory, into rumors. They say you use hexes, that you wear a rat's tail around your neck as a talisman, that the fleas don't bite you, that you walk in places where others die. They think you're cursed. Maybe you are. But tonight, a child is coughing in the alley 3 doors down, and her mother saw droppings by the cradle. So you pack your sack, whistle for your ferret, and step once more into the shadows. The rats are waiting. The people whisper. The work never ends. And the devil, well, if he walks among the rats, at least you know the way. But you never liked the sound of castle work. Too many rules. Too many boots stomping above your head. Too many thick walls full of secrets that weren't yours to know. But coin was coin, and the steward had a rat problem he couldn't ignore. That's how you find yourself here. Lantern in hand, boots squelching softly on the mold-slick stones, creeping deeper into the bowels of a fortress not built for your kind. The door behind you shuts with a thud that feels too final. Even the torch on the wall flickers like it wants to escape. You descend into the cellar, where the air thickens, rank with sour wine, spoiled meat, and the unmistakable stench of rat urine. It clings to your nostrils like tar, and no amount of breathing through your sleeve will save you. You've learned not to flinch at the scuttling. That frantic skitter of claws across stone is a constant companion. It comes from all directions. The walls, the barrels, sometimes the ceiling. It's a sound that says, "You're not alone down here." The castle cellar is a place of rot and memory. Rows of wine casks slump in the shadows like drunks at confession. Wooden shelves strain beneath sacks of flour crawling with beetles. Wheels of cheese have collapsed under their own mold. Somewhere in the dark, something wet drops onto the floor with a sickening plop. You don't look to see what it is. You move carefully. The last time you rushed, you stepped through a rotten crate and spent the next week limping with a festering splinter the size of a chicken bone. The castle rats are smarter than village ones. They know the dark better than you do. And they've learned to wait, quiet, until your back is turned. You've seen them dance across shelves like jesters, mocking your lantern light, ducking through cracks no man could squeeze a finger into. You crouch beside a basket of dried fish that now looks like it's hosting a funeral. The stench is unholy. You jab your iron rod into the pile, and the rats erupt. A dozen of them, maybe more. Brown and black bodies tumble over one another in a desperate sprint toward darkness. You swing the rod, connect with one, maybe two. The rest vanish into holes in the wall that weren't there a moment ago. They always know the way out. You never do. Your reward? A gnawed carcass and a smear of something that may once have been cod. The steward will want to know why the infestation's getting worse. He'll ignore the piles of waste in the corners, the dripping stonework, the guards who dump spoiled food rather than climb the stairs. It'll be your fault. Again. Speaking of guards, you hear one now. Clanking down the stairs, torch held too high, voice booming in that lazy, noble drawl. "Still at it, rat man." You grunt in response. No point wasting words. This one likes to call you Rat Man, like it's clever. You wish he'd call you anything but late for your pay, but he's not here to help, just to remind you that you're not welcome. "Don't wander near the wine casks," he adds. "Lady Margaret saw a rat last week and near fainted. If she sees another, you'll be whipped." You tip your head in the way that says heard, but not agreed. You've already set traps by the wine. Of course, the rats are there. It's the only part of the cellar that's warm. And humans are fools for storing grain and fruit where rats can reach them. Not that anyone listens to a man who smells like mildew and mouse blood. The guard leaves. You return to your work. You crawl between barrels stacked so close they might as well be walls. The space narrows, and your back aches from hunching. The lantern dims as its wick sinks into wax. You don't want to relight it. Too risky in these tight corners. So, you fumble in the dark, feeling for the cold steel of the trap you set this morning. Your fingers brush something wet, not steel. You freeze. Listen. The rats are watching again. It's not your imagination. Sometimes you swear they're learning, waiting for you to set traps so they can steal bait without springing them. You've seen one drag a chunk of bread across the room without triggering a single wire. You don't know what sorcery that is. All you know is that it's late, you're hungry, and there's still work to do. You find the sprung trap at last, empty, bait gone. Trigger snapped, no rat. You hiss between your teeth. That's 3 traps this week. You can already hear the steward's voice. Waste of coin, this one. But he'll keep hiring you. Because no one else will come down here. Not even the guards. Not even the kitchen boys. They all know what you do. This cellar belongs to the rats. You keep going. You have to. You'll check the stores near the meat hooks next. And then behind the old barrels, where the floor turns soft. You'll patch holes with cloth and stone, knowing full well the rats will chew through it before dawn. You'll catch a few maybe. You'll kill a few more. And still they'll come, like shadows made flesh. The lantern guttered out 10 minutes ago. You're working by memory now. One hand on the wall, the other gripping your club. You feel the cold brush of fur across your ankle. Then another, then many. It's like walking through fog made of living things. You shudder, but you keep moving. Because this is the job. And no one else is desperate enough to do it. In the quiet, you remember something your old master once told you. There's no winning against rats, only surviving. You're not sure you even want to win. You just want to get out of this place alive, and maybe with enough coin for bread. Tomorrow, you'll come back. You always do. The castle always needs its shadows chased, and someone always has to go down there and do it. You feel it in your knees first. Damp cold that seeps through the bone no matter how tightly you wrap the wool around them. A slow ache that's not from age, because, truth be told, few rat catchers make it long enough to blame the years. It's from crouching too long in cellars, stalking filth through mud-thickened alleys, crawling under taverns, and plunging your bare arms into the dark mouths of latrines. One wrong move, and it's not the rat that ends up mangled. But here you are, still breathing, still scratching at the sores under your belt, still smelling like last week's fishmonger stall. Not that anyone thanks you for it. No one ever says, "Ah, there goes a brave rat catcher." No songs, no prayers, just a look of disgust from the butcher's wife as she tosses you half a loaf that's gone too hard to chew. Even the innkeeper's dog growls when you get too close. You don't blame it. You've got the stink of rot under your fingernails and a trail of flea bites on your thighs that never really fade. They don't teach you how to die in this line of work. But you've seen it. You remember young Jarek. Thought he was clever, bragged too much, tried to pull a nest out of a wet sack in the dark with his teeth clamped on a torch for light. One rat made it up his sleeve. Another went for the eye. That torch fell straight onto his tunic, soaked through with rat oil and vinegar wash. He didn't scream long. What's worse, the rats kept coming, drawn to the smell, as if death were just another bait. Then there was Oswin, old, even by your gutter-low standards. He'd been chasing rats since before the plague took his wife and both sons. Said he had nothing left to lose. That's what made him brave. Or stupid. He'd wander into plague houses no one else would enter, his nose stuffed with dried sage and cloth. Didn't matter in the end. One bite to the calf, festered black in days. They say the blood stopped flowing to his foot before he could crawl back out. The truth is, you don't get to grow old catching rats. No man retires with coin in his hand and a clean shirt on his back. You either rot slowly from the inside out, starving, scabbed and forgotten, or you go quick. A collapsed roof in a granary, a pack of rats turning on you in the dark, a landlord who doesn't pay and pushes you down a hatch, and that's if the fever doesn't get you first. They call it the rat catcher's cough. Wet, rattling, constant. You wake up choking on phlegm that smells like the alleys you sleep in. There's a taste of metal in your mouth that never fades, even when you manage to swipe a turnip or a pint of the brewer's backwash. No one kisses a rat catcher. No one dares. Your breath could peel the paint off a church door. The nobles hire you when they're desperate, when the rats have eaten their sugar stores, or when one crawls out of a cradle and bites a baby's face. That's when they send for the likes of you. But you don't go through the front gate. You go round the servant's entrance, and the maid leaves out a lantern and locks the door behind you. They'll pay you, sometimes in coin, sometimes in leftover meat, and once in a pair of gloves stiff with some long-dead footman's blood. One baron gave you a flask of wine, laced with something bitter. You slept in a ditch for 2 days. And when you woke up, your sack of skins was gone. Still, you keep at it. Because what else would you do? No one teaches a rat catcher to read. Your hands are too calloused for fine work, too dirty for bread making, and too scarred for a tavern post. Even the other beggars look at you sideways. You can't join the watch. Guards don't stink like you. Priests won't listen. Your fleas might jump onto their robes. So you hunt. You track them through straw and dung and wet timber. You chase them with ferrets and clubs and boots. You rip them from rafters and dig them out of walls. You trade their corpses for crusts and coppers. You set traps with cheese you stole from market stalls. You burn nests with oil that costs more than you earn in a week. And all the while, you itch. Your skin splits in winter and blisters in spring. You cough blood into your sleeve. You dream of rats chewing through your belly as you sleep. Some nights you wake up thinking you've been bitten, but it's only your own ribs pressing through the skin. You hear stories of catchers eaten alive in the sewers of London, of men whose faces swelled up with plague, of lads who lost fingers to bites that blackened overnight, of a woman rat catcher, mad they said, who vanished into a collapsed tunnel, her screams echoing for hours after the stones fell. You believe every word. And yet, you keep going. Because until the rats are gone, and they never are, there's work, And where there's work, there's food. Not enough. Never enough. But just enough to crawl another day. So when the last catch comes, and it will come, you know it won't be in a warm bed or with prayers whispered over you. Number, it'll be in the dark. It'll be wet. Your last breath will smell like mildew and rat piss. And maybe, if you're lucky, someone will find you before the vermin do. But probably not. You will not be remembered. No song, no grave marker. Just the bones of a man who kept the rats away until he couldn't. Now, sleep, rat catcher. You've earned your rest. Thanks for listening. If you're already asleep, great. We've successfully lulled you to sleep. And if you're still awake, well, that's impressive. If you genuinely enjoy these boring stories about history, feel free to subscribe to our channel whenever you're in the mood. Sleep well, and good night.